the Digital Fair Repair Forum on a bill that I carry in the Assembly, and it's A7006, and Senator Breslin carries it in the Senate, S4104. And just thrilled to have the interest and support. And you're going to hear from a few people who really have worked on this for many years and really understand the needs and the importance of this bill. So I'm truly excited about this bill. It's a new one for me, although I know the bill has been around, and I know it's catching tremendous traction around the country, if not the world. Actually, I'd read an article about Europe. Some countries there adopting this, and that's what caught my eye when I reached out to Donna Lupardo. So this bill, essentially, I'm just going to do the quick introduction. I know many of you know this better than I, but let's just set the stage anyway. This bill is about trying to level the playing field for independent repair shops on digital electronics. It requires companies to provide the necessary parts and information for repairs. And I do remember, I'm old enough to remember the TV repair shops in many strip malls growing up. New York consumers, it is estimated, could save $2.4 billion a year, which is just a stunning number. US PIRG has estimated that it could grow employment at full potential. It initially could grow almost 15% of employees on right to repair shops, but ultimately even do that fourfold or 400%. So it has tremendous consumer savings, tremendous job creation, and I'm all about small business, and we've learned how essential small business is. During COVID, small businesses are our lifeline. And then, of course, it's got the entire piece of electronic waste. And we all know that climate change is the single, one of the single biggest threats to our existence, actually, and we need to take care more for Mother Earth, and electronic waste is just growing leaps and bounds. We had a press event earlier today, and I actually should have brought my collection of laptops and phones and desktops and what have you. So far, Massachusetts is the only state that has passed a serious form of right to repair. So I'd love to say we could lead the nation, but we won't. But we still need to. I think the more states that pass this, the more it will have a ripple effect. And with that, you will hear more. We have just a great lineup today to talk about how this matters in the electronics industry, in the agriculture industry. Senator Breslin, Senator Hinchey, our new Senator Michelle Hinchey, spoke so eloquently this morning at our press event to talk about how that matters. We also had Assemblyman John McDonald, who's one of my prime co-sponsors, talk about what a difference this could make for schools, and think about how we could teach children as well. So we're really going to reach out to the education community, because how many children around the country, particularly city kids where many of the schools are still closed, had broken electronics in their house, or ones they couldn't hook up, or an easy repair might have made a difference for having siblings share electronics. So there's just so much on this. Yet we are being fought by some big businesses. So with that, I'm going to start with the Repair Association here in New York, and that is the executive director, Gay Gordon Byrne. And Gay, please take this away, and then we'll go from there. We have folks from the New York Farm Bureau. I'm so thrilled to have. We have folks from Ifixit, some of the small businesses, as well as repair groups, and the Buffalo Tool Library, some great businesses, as well as Consumer Reports, where this is a huge consumer issue, NYPIRG, again, that I already mentioned, Lawyers for the Public Interest, and more. So we've just got a fabulous lineup. And with that, Gay, please go ahead. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. That's terrific introduction. And again, I got to thank you so much for getting behind this bill, because it's a big bill. It's an important bill. Anyway, just by way of background, we did used to be able to fix all of our stuff. And I am also old enough to remember that there were repair shops in every town, not just TV repair, but appliance repair. There was always some fix-it guy. And there used to be a Radio Shack where you could go buy things that would let you fix stuff. And what seems to have happened over the past 20 years is that because the internet made it easy for companies to stop sharing materials, Perhaps you remember that things used to come with manuals. Well, those were printed. And when they put them on the internet, they stopped printing them. And then they started saying, well, we need you to log in so we know who's on our account. And then they said, well, we could use this as a paywall. And then they said, oh, we don't want to let anybody see it at all. And it's kind of been a downhill slide that's been going on for 20 years. And we got here because companies have had to do very little to monopolize repair. So they don't sell parts, they don't sell tools, they don't sell diagnostics, they don't sell or even post the manuals freely that would let you know how to go about repairing your stuff. So it's really, we're at the point where probably 90% of the stuff that's on the market, if it has a chip in it, you really aren't going to be able to fix it unless the manufacturer, unless you go and beg the manufacturer. And if the manufacturer doesn't feel like it, it's not happening. So we really do actually have the legal right to repair, but we don't have the legal right to make it practical. And that's what this bill does. It basically makes repair practical again. So companies that are going to do business in New York are going to have to provide fair and reasonable access to the stuff that they already provide. They just don't provide it to everybody. They provide it only to certain people that they have a business relationship with. So that's the background of the bill. And the Assemblywoman is totally correct. We did have a bill passed, and it made it possible for you to take your car to an independent mechanic. And that was done in 2012. So it's pretty recent law. And if all of the horrible things that the lobbyists in opposition said about that bill, that people would drive themselves off the road, they'd kill pedestrians, they'd blow themselves up, they would steal trade secrets, they would abuse copyrights, they would violate patents, they'd be insecure in their cybersecurity. If those things had actually happened, we would know by now. It's been 8 years. So I think we could very confidently say that the same bill, and really the only major difference between this bill and the car bill is the word car or automobile. It's pretty much the same exact thing as you already do when you take your car to an independent mechanic, as opposed to only to the dealership. And the benefits are the same. If there's competition for repair, then there's a lid on pricing. There's more competition for services. People have to do a better job to keep the business. And these are all good things, and they will flow from this bill, even if individuals still want to go to the dealership, or they only want to go to the Apple store, or they only want to go to, you name the product, John Deere. If that's their thing, they can do it, but it shouldn't block the rest of us from having the option of using some other source for repair. And frankly, manufacturers are not entitled to block repair. It seems to become a common thought that they can because they made it, and that's actually illegal under antitrust law. But we're also 20 years away from any meaningful antitrust actions on that topic. I think the horse has fled the barn. I don't think we have the opportunity anymore to deal with a strictly an antitrust approach. So we're hoping that New York can make this done for the rest of the world, for the rest of the products that have computerized parts in them, as opposed to just the parts that are associated with motor vehicles. So this is a logical bill. It makes a lot of sense. People will be able to fix their stuff. They'll save money. They'll keep stuff from being thrown out. They'll hold on to the things that they like and not have to face a new learning curve, which is my personal pet peeve. I hate buying new. I don't like having to learn new things. And I would much rather keep my old things working because I know how to operate them. But the opposition is big because there's a lot of money involved. And the money is involved because if you can monopolize a business, it's always more profitable. So monopolizing repair is more profitable. And I guess I just don't have a lot of empathy for manufacturers that refuse to allow competition, because I think that's an important part of our lives. It's what's driven us as a nation. And, aw shucks, oh my God, somebody else might be able to fix this product. I really looking forward to that day. So thank you. I really, really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, and I'm here for the duration. So let me know what you need.
Thank you. And thank you for all your years of work on this. It is just so well put. And in the end, fair repair. It is just a fairness issue. And as a consumer, I do find it frustrating. I have a crack in my iPhone right now, and I've gone to the Fixits in the mall to help save some money. It's $100 to fix my screen each time I go to fix it. And I was told today, if I get a new phone, or when I have to, because you almost have to get a new phone at some point, it will be $300 to fix that screen. So that alone is it's just troublesome, and it really keeps people out of the market. And I do think that this is it becomes a real fairness issue, as well as some equity issues here. But thank you, Gay. Thank you for continuing to champion this. Yes, we are running up against some big businesses who are going to oppose this, but that's not the first time we've run up against them, and that's why all your voices are so important. With that, let's turn to the New York Farm Bureau, and we have Jeff Williams, who is the Director of Public Policy. Jeff, Senator Breslin, Senator Hinchey were just so terrific on this morning, and I know we've run into problems here. We talk about consumers, the average consumer saving a few $100s if we had this legislation. But if we talk about the average farmer, it could be in the thousands. Please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And you thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and thanks for sponsoring the bill. And, farmers, you mentioned, are small businesses, and they don't have a lot of extra money, but they also are dealing with more and more complex equipment on their farms every day. And that makes it more efficient, but also makes it more troublesome to get repaired. And so when especially this time of year, farmers are out planting corn and soybeans, and they're hammering right now. And if a tractor or a piece of equipment goes down, they can't just stop and say, well, I'll break it down to the shop, and next week I'll pick it up and it'll be great. They need to get that thing going as soon as possible. To be able to, their farmers are all very resourceful. They have a high level of technical expertise. If they could only just get the assistance for them to figure it out and deal with it in the field, and then start working again. That is best case scenario. So this bill would really go a long way in helping farmers be more efficient, be more effective, and keep their own money while doing their own work, which they're very, very used to. So farming has become so much more efficient, and we talk about precision agriculture, and so we're really only planting where the best places to plant. We're only using the best fertilizers and the most minimum amount of fertilizer that they can. And all of that would probably go away if this continues. So we really do need this legislation. And thank you very, very much for your work on it.
Thank you, Jeff. This is such a big issue, and we all know what has happened to small farms in this country. There's been so much work to help save farms in this state, and I just think this is a critical piece of it. So I really appreciate the Farm Bureau backing this legislation. We'll keep moving because I know we have a number of people to talk today. And I mentioned Ifixit because I've been to some of the stores to help with my own phones and laptops and iPads. But Kyle Wiens, am I saying that correct, Kyle? Who is the co-founder and CEO of Ifixit, and talk about a true expert. Please go ahead, Kyle.
Well, I couldn't be more thrilled to be working on this. Ifixit is an online organization that enables repair around the world. We help over 100 million people learn how to repair their products every year. Last year, we had 2.7 million New Yorkers that used Ifixit to learn how to repair their products. So that's something like 13% of the population. That's a lot of people. And if you look at the kind of people who need to turn to self-repair or independent repair, these are folks that can't necessarily afford new products. Particularly over the last year, we've really learned what the spectrum is of who has access to technology, who has access to the computers that we need to be able to go to remote school. And we've really learned that underserved and disadvantaged communities have been particularly hit hard by lack of access to technology. And so they have turned to places like Ifixit for the information and said, hey, maybe I can give my child my older laptop. Maybe I can put more RAM in it to make it work with Zoom. But that only works if the manufacturers enable that. And increasingly, we're seeing you'll have something like a diagnostic software tool to program a new part that Apple won't make available to technicians, or perhaps you need a new screen to fix your Samsung Galaxy, but Samsung won't sell those parts directly to consumers. So there are many manufacturers that are cutting off access. At the same time, there are other companies that have really done a stand-up fantastic job. You've got companies like HP and Lenovo and Dell that I don't think would be impacted by this bill at all. If you look at what the bill requires, it says, hey, you need to make parts, information, and tools available. Well, HP does all of that. HP, I would say, is already in compliance with this. So this is not a revolutionary idea. We have this for cars. We've got PC manufacturers acting in a responsible way, but we have some manufacturers that have decided to bet on this planned obsolescence model where they're going to force us into new products, and that really harms, I think, disadvantaged communities more than anyone else, because maybe the best way to afford an iPhone for someone who is really running at the edge of what they can afford, maybe it's to buy a 5-year-old phone. But that only works if that phone can live long enough to get to them. And so I couldn't be more thrilled to be working on this. And we have some of the world's foremost experts on making hardware stick around. I think Louis Rossmann here has probably saved more computers from the dump than any other person that I personally know. So couldn't be more thrilled to be working on this. This is a high impact issue with a high, I think, leverage point for impact on society. Thank you.
Speaking so, Kyle, thank you. And you just had some terrific stats. One of the first ones you started off with, it just bears repeating, and I want to make sure I got it correct. Did you say just in New York, you have helped 2.7 million customers try to repair their phones or electronics? Can you just repeat a little of that? I'm sorry.
Sure. We had 2.7 million distinct IP addresses from New York access repair information on Ifixit. So this is information that the community has created, whether it's how to install a new battery in your phone or how to fix your vacuum cleaner. And they're going to Ifixit because the manufacturers don't provide this information.
Okay, we're going to have to get a little fact sheet from you, because that's extraordinary. And by the way, that was a good shout out as well to some of the good actors on here. I've had some HP products, so that's very good to know. And that there are others. I mean, it's another reason why one of the first lines I think I mentioned this morning was how we need to level the playing field. And part of this is about leveling the playing field, because there are the good actors, so to speak, in this industry. So terrific. Thank you. And it looks like you've already done an introduction for Louis Rossmann, owner of the Rossmann Repair Group. And Louis, if please go ahead. Welcome.
Hi. So yeah, I have a repair shop here. I started doing...
Louis, we need to up that volume there, please.
How's that? Better?
Much better. Thank you.
Okay,
Start from the beginning again, okay? Thank you.
So I have a repair shop in Manhattan. I started doing this kind of as a hobby a bit 12 years ago, and I got more professional with it about 10 years ago. The thing that makes me excited about this, doing it for a job, is that I started off doing this with about $268, and I had a few $1,000s in credit card debt, and now I have about 15 employees. The salaries range from $15 to $42. It is easy for someone who is a high school dropout to be able to get into doing this and double or triple their salary. I've had people who are middle managers at pizzerias come to me when I used to be teaching a class on doing component level board repair, and they went from working at a pizzeria to making $5,000-$10,000 a month, just going door to door to all these places with broken technology and saying, I'll buy it from you for $500, and they'll go, sure, we're going to throw this out. He takes it, he works on it for a month or two, and then he has $40,000 worth of stuff that he can sell. And there's something really rewarding about being able to take stuff that is actually in a garbage and not only make it work again and save some people money who are buying it who couldn't afford a new one, but to also be able to make a living for yourself, to be able to leave Walmart, leave the being a cashier at Kmart or something, and be able to do something that makes you a lot more money when you just don't have the qualifications to go on monster.com with your resume and be able to make a living. So the reason that I'm excited about this is because I've watched over the past 10 years as the kind of the bridge that I've crossed to get where I am is just kind of burned away behind me, where So one example with one of the devices that I fixed, this one recent MacBook that came out in 2019. I used to just be able to go to a website and buy a charging chip to be able to fix this. It's a $2,000 product. Apple charges $1,500 to fix the motherboard. The chip that dies is $5. So there's anywhere between that $5 cost of the chip and the $1,500 Apple charges you. There's a lot of room there to be able to make a living at fixing them. And when I go to the manufacturer of the chip and I say, hi, I'd like to buy this, they say publicly, we can't sell it to you. Apple doesn't allow us to sell it to you. And and more companies are doing this across every single industry. And I'm still able to get access to some of this stuff by means that I'm obviously not going to put in a public broadcast. But many new people are not. And that means that they're not going to be able to start repair businesses. They're not going to be able to help save their customers money. They're not going to be able to take that path from a few $1,000s in credit card debt and I have $200 in cash to I have a store and 15 employees. And I want to make sure that's still there for the next generation.
Thank you. I think what we're going to have to do is take snippets and post every single one of your talks because you're each bringing such a fabulous angle. And Louis, we talked about that today, to think that you started with a couple $100s in your pocket and now have 15 employees. That's just extraordinary. And
you've muted yourself, Assembly member.
okay, you missed those wonderful words of mine. Sorry. Okay, what I said on the mute is that I think we need to take each of these snippets and post them all separately because each of you have brought such a fascinating, terrific angle to this. Louis, I so love the story of starting your business with a couple $100s and now having 15 employees, and you probably have helped launch a couple of other businesses as well due to the people that you've trained. So this is just absolutely terrific, and it's so true. So much of the reason I jumped on this bill is because of the small business angle, and the entrepreneurial opportunities here just seem limitless. So thank you, just terrific. And I think we're going to hear from another business, Justin Millman, who is a co-owner of Cell Mechanic Incorporated. Do we have, there's Justin. Yes, there you are, Justin. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. And thank you for letting me speak this afternoon. You said a whole bunch of things in the beginning that I can identify with, but there's one in particular that really hits home for me and my company. What we do is we repair devices for schools. That is basically all that we do these days. Last month, I repaired 2,500 Chromebooks and iPads for local New York schools in Nassau County, Suffolk County, upstate New York. We are a smallish business with 12 to 15 employees depending on the day. I work many hours a week running around. I'm in Yonkers right now. I just delivered some Chromebooks to a school before I head back to the island to spend the rest of the day in the office. And I just wanted to tell one brief story that I had in the last few years. I think it was in 2015, 2016, there was a bit of a raw material shortage that caused some iPad screens to be very difficult to get. I repaired quite a few iPads through Nassau BOCES in a public contract for a lot of local Long Island schools. And we had to tell the schools that they were going to have to wait a little bit while we figured out some logistical problems and why we can't get their iPads fixed in the normal time frame that we had, that we used to repair them in. All of this led to a large in-person meeting at the Nassau BOCES facility, where I got into a small argument with one of the project managers for BOCES. He looked at me and he said, "Why don't you just call Apple and get the parts?" And I politely explained to him that that's, this is what I do professionally. This is not how that works. And, we all have our roles here. And, I don't blame him. I'm not, I'm a young looking person, and several years ago I didn't look older than I do now, so I didn't blame him for being a little hesitant. But about a week later I got a phone call from that same gentleman, and he said, "I called Apple and I had them send an education department rep down to us. We're Nassau BOCES. We are the largest BOCES in the state of New York. We have 347 public schools in our territory, 57 school districts, I believe." And you know what they told me? I said, they told you no, right? And he said, yeah, they told me that education is 1% of 1%. And if you don't want to get new iPads, don't get new iPads. And he said, isn't that disgusting? And I said, well, yeah, that's exactly what I told you last week in the meeting. And that's the way it's been, and it hasn't changed. And they've made some minor changes to the structure of how they allow some repairs on phones, but still, to this day, there is no way to repair an iPad, according to them. It is not an option. And it shouldn't be like that. And, you know, for a number of reasons, and I could talk for hours, so I'm gonna stop now, but you know, that's the gist of why I'm here and why I'm donating my time to help fight for this. Thank you.
Okay, that's a pretty stunning comment. Too bad we don't have it in writing. But can you repeat the very first part again? You guys are just all giving great data points here. Justin, how many Chromebooks did you say you repaired right at the beginning of your comments? How many did you repair? I think you said just this year. Was that 2,500 that you?
That was just in March. Sorry. I don't keep a breakdown on which manufacturer they come from, but our devices that came in last month was 2,490 something.
So almost 2,500 devices were repaired just last month for BOCES in Nassau County.
Yes. So like last year, even with school closed for 6 months, we still repaired around 11,000 devices throughout the year. So that was 11,000 devices that were able to go back to children in schools for less than the cost of a new one.
I live here in Albany, and my children went to the Albany public schools. 70% poverty, lots of challenges, right? When they shut down last year, so many of the children, it's about 10,000 children in the school district, so many children did not even have devices. There was many months of wait to get those devices. It's just been a maddening process. The school district was able to find the funds along with some private donations to get more Chromebooks, iPads, whatever they were using into the hands of children. But just think about it. When they break or when they don't function, there's no one to turn to. So that's just, those are incredible stats that I hope we can amplify by getting the word out on this. Again, this is just terrific. Thank you, Justin. And with that, we're going to switch to Darren Cotton, who is the founder of the Buffalo Tool Library. Darren, please go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much for having me be part of this conversation. If you couldn't tell from my virtual background, we are in fact a library of tools, about 3,800 to be exact. And I started the tool library back in 2011 as a grad student with a really immediate need, a really crummy landlord and a rundown apartment. And so I realized by sharing tools, it not only gave me more control over my life and my home, but that it could do the same for my neighbors as well. And so through the tool library in 2017, we started working with the City of Buffalo Recycling Department, and we launched our first ever Dare to Repair Cafe. So for those who aren't familiar, repair cafes were conceived as a way to rethink waste and transform our throwaway economy by shifting people's mindset towards repairability and reusability. And so individuals can bring broken items to a repair cafe, and a volunteer fixer will try and repair the item alongside them for free. So the goal here is to not only cut down on household waste and help rekindle a fixer culture, but to really help foster the idea of sharing this kind of traditional skill building and knowledge and to build community. So prior to the pandemic, we had hosted about 24 events. We repaired close to 400 items and diverted about 3,100 pounds of waste from local landfills. And popular items that people brought in included laptops, household appliances. I would say vacuums and lamps were probably two of the biggest items. I know my mom was actually one of the successful attendees getting her vacuum fixed. And so the goal here really is to make repair more accessible and easier. And companies, unfortunately, have strategically made that harder and harder. And in a lot of cases, you can't even open up some of these appliances and some of these devices. And they don't make it financially feasible for consumers to be able to fix their own devices. So the goal here, which we love, is to really force manufacturers to make repair an accessible right. And so, we really believe here at the Tool Library that New York needs the Fair Repair Act because we can't afford to keep contributing to the waste problem. We think that repairing more could allow us not only to save money, but to allow society as a whole to consume less, produce less, and waste less, all while maintaining, if not improving, our collective quality of life. So we believe that when you buy something, you should own it and have the right to repair it.
Oops, I'll take myself off mute this time. Darren, terrific. And what another fabulous example of the entrepreneurial spirit that you started in grad school. We had Chris from computer repair, I'm forgetting the exact name of it, or cell repair this morning. And he said, if you buy it, you should own it. But the fact that you can't repair it, and he said it in a much catchier way, but the fact that you buy a product that you can't repair, it's like a planned obsolescence. In some ways, do you really own that device? Terrific stuff, and love your Dare to Repair ideas. I could use a couple of those classes. And with that, we're going to switch to Jean Crowley, teacher at the Ethical Culture Fieldston School. Hi, Jean. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. So I work at a pre-K through 12 school here in New York City. We're not a large school, about 1,600 students. And we have repair experiences for children as young as 10 years old all the way up to 17. We have a repair tutoring model where kids work with each other to teach them how to repair their own devices. We started in 2015. Each year we average between 200 and 300 devices. The kids repair their own cell phones. They break a lot of cell phones. And I really wanted to highlight something that's super important here. In addition to the devices being fixed, we're providing an affirmative environment for curiosity. So we really have two kind of kids who come to our center. We have kids who are kind of like tinkerers and perhaps electronic destructors, who we bring in and say, you know what, your interest is good, and let's cultivate that, and let's make you an expert and give you a productive outlet for all of these things you've been doing on your own. And we also have students who come in who would never even consider themselves as repairers. It never even occurred to them, and we provide these experiences for them to see themselves connected to electronics and connected to a machine in a way that was completely outside of their thinking before that moment. And I think it's so important to look at, we think of kids, they're so young, right? When we started this in 2015, our students who are sophomores are graduating this year, some of them with degrees in engineering. And so I want to highlight this quote that, Lewis said about burning the bridge behind him. Every single person who works at these companies who are fighting against the right to repair grew up in a repair-friendly environment. The innovations that make their companies what they are today are only possible because they grew up in a space that affirmed and rewarded curiosity that led them on to become innovators. And one thing I'm really worried about, and as I see, in my own center, parts are less available. Students come to me and they say, Jeannie, can I do this? Is this okay? Am I going to get in trouble? Will this impact my ability to get into college if somehow they come after me? We're creating a chilling effect for young innovators. And it's an incredible national self-own for us to think about the innovation pipeline and to cut that off. So we right now see repair fading off pretty sharply. And that has a very different impact at the youth level than at the adult level, because the kids coming up in this next generation will never have contact with repair if we allow this current pathway to continue. And you think about the long tail of that, the kids who are discouraged from repair, the kids who are told, no, you don't own it, you have to take it to a company, you are solely a consumer. If you open it up, you could be punished quite harshly. Those kids are not going to go on to be future innovators. And so the long tail of the American workforce that makes it possible for us to sustain future innovation is going to die out if we allow the current trend to continue. And what's interesting is, the DMCA is an American piece of legislation, so it's not going to die out other places. We're just going to do it to ourselves. And so I think it's so important, in addition to the existing adult members of our New York community who are living and thriving with repair and need it to continue. There is an entire generation of young innovators coming up the pipe who will not be able to continue in that path if we turn this off for them now.
I'm really inspired with each of you today. This is just fabulous, and if any of you have prepared remarks, can you make sure that we get them? And if you don't have my email or Alex Flood's email, please get it to Gay and she will get it to us, because you've each offered fabulous statistics as well as just some great lines. And I'm going to repeat one of your early lines, which that you are fueling at your school an affirmative environment for curiosity. And isn't that what education is all about? An affirmative environment for curiosity. I love that. And that the tech industry itself is burning the bridge behind them. That you can no longer repair, and it's that we are hurting the innovation pipeline. We're going to have to use that, because I keep talking about the environment and the need for small businesses. But you're right, we're actually hurting the innovation pipeline. So I thank you, and please send anything that you've also written, because this is just terrific. And then next, I'm going to try to just keep moving here, but consumer reports. So we're going to have hear from Chuck Bell, program director. And Chuck, I think we spoke about my WPA bill, the Works Progress Administration. We weren't as successful, but I think the new Biden administration is doing a lot more on that. So we are still creating jobs. And one of the reasons I like this bill so much is because it is about ultimately creating jobs. So Chuck, it's a pleasure to see you. It's been a year since the beginning of COVID. So please go ahead. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Assemblymember Fahey, thank you, and Senator Breslin, so much for your leadership in pushing forward this really important bill. I work at Consumer Reports. We're a nonprofit independent membership association that works side by side with consumers for transparency and fairness in the marketplace. Our national headquarters happen to be in Yonkers, New York, so I represent our positions here in New York State. And so we really appreciate the opportunity to support and discuss AB 7006, the Digital Fair Repair Act. This important bill, as we've been discussing, will help ensure that consumers have the choice to fix their own electronic equipment if they can, or to have it fixed by a repair servicer of their choosing, including servicers who are independent of the manufacturer who made the product. And I think we should point out here, consumers, a lot of these products are not cheap, either consumer equipment or farm equipment. Consumers and farmers pay dearly for the equipment they are buying, and we don't want companies taking away our economic rights to repair our own stuff. So at Consumer Reports, we have long supported the right to repair. And we worked together with the other advocates to develop a model bill to help guide state legislators. And so the bill that we're discussing here today follows the model act that the CR has developed. And we've also incorporated these principles into our own ratings in this form of this thing called the digital standard, which is a set of best practices that Consumer Reports advocates for to evaluate the privacy and security of software, digital platforms and services, and internet connected products, as well as to help influence the design of those products. So we think the right to repair really should be integral to everything that's made in the economy, and we're going to keep fighting for it. We think it's important to safeguard and maintain consumers' ability to exercise their full rights of ownership over the consumer electronic products that they purchase, including the right to repair them, the right to resell them, even as technology evolves. And so ensuring an effective right to repair will also expand consumer choice in the marketplace, save consumers money, and reduce waste as well. Consumers, farmers, and others who have been able in the past to choose to fix their own cars, machinery, appliances, and other products, or to call a neighborhood repair shop or mechanic, know how important that these ownership rights for other products that we have. But as products such as smartphones and televisions to appliances are increasingly becoming outfitted with computer software, it's become easier and easier for manufacturers to actually interfere with those rights. And it's often difficult, as we've discussed, for consumers to make very simple repairs on expensive devices, even things as simple as changing the smartphone battery or replacing a cracked screen. And not only are electronics frequently designed in a way to intentionally prevent easy repair, manufacturers are clamping down on the diagnostic information, the repair tools, and replacement parts that are needed to fix consumer electronic products. Some manufacturers even go so far as to put digital locks and disabling tripwires on devices to block third-party repair. Which is anti-consumer practice. These tactics force consumers to rely on the manufacturer or the manufacturer's hand-picked servicer to fix those products. And then the manufacturer is free to charge whatever it wishes, or even to refuse to repair the product and force the consumer to throw it away and buy a new product. And while that may be in their self-interest, it's not in the consumer interest. Again, we pay dearly. Smartphones, computers are not cheap, and it's not fair. And it's not fair rule in the economy to allow this to happen. So, as we've been working with our colleagues around the country and other states, we also see some manufacturers and their representatives working to defeat right to repair legislation, often by using spurious arguments about safety and security. And in fact, we believe this bill would actually improve the safety of products. Withholding information and tools for repair makes third-party repair less reliable and less safe. So this legislation would help ensure that independent repair technicians who would have to meet whatever certification requirements are required by state law, just like authorized repair technicians, that they will have access to the proper instructions that they need that are vetted, appropriately vetted for safety. So we look forward to working with you and your colleagues and Senator Breslin to secure an effective right for repair for consumers in New York State. And in working on this model act, we've developed expertise in how to best ensure that the language in the bill is clear and achieves its important purpose. So if we do get to a point where we have to make some modifications, we stand at the ready to work closely with you to make sure that this bill will be as effective as possible. And we'll be at your back, so let us know what we need to do to help get this passed in this session. Thank you so much.
Chuck, thank you so much, Chuck. I'm a huge fan of Consumer Reports and long-time reader. So thank you for your work on this, and I hope you'll issue some memos of support on this because it really is important. I understand there's legislation pending in about 14 states on one of the more recent articles that I've seen, but we know the obstacles we are up against. We're up against some very serious, well-funded obstacles here. And I really appreciate you saying, and I think it's important coming from Consumer Reports, that if you can say this will help safety and security, yeah, it's better you say it than what we can say, and that's a really important feature to pass because that is one of the arguments against this type of legislation. So, and the fact that there's you also noted that there's an increasing, you're seeing more and more of the clamping down on diagnostic tools and abilities, and that is a growing problem. So I look for it's great to have you on board with this as well, and look forward to hearing more. We have 2 more speakers, and I know we're running a little bit out of time, but this is just everyone has been terrific. The New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. New York Lawyers for the Public Interest. We have a legal fellow who's done some work on this as well, Caroline Susloff. Caroline Susloff, please go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Caroline Susloff, and I'm a legal fellow in the Environmental Justice Program at New York Lawyers for the Public Interest, or as we call it in shorthand, NILPI. NILPI works with communities across the New York City area, providing support and services to combat inequalities, injustices, and infringements on civil rights. Our environmental justice program has advocated and litigated on the subject of the inequities of the distribution of environmental burdens and benefits in New York City for almost 3 decades. Thank you to Assemblymember Fahey for having us here today to comment on an important piece of legislation that would further efforts to reduce unnecessary waste. One of the key issue areas the environmental justice program works on is waste equity. This refers to the equitable distribution of both the burdens and the benefits of our waste management system. It is no secret that polluting waste infrastructure, such as transfer stations, truck depots, landfills, and incinerators, have historically been located in low-income communities of color. Electronic waste is especially toxic, releasing harmful contaminants like lead, mercury, and arsenic. So any reduction in waste, therefore, lessens the negative environmental and public health impacts borne by these communities. NILPI supports the Digital Fair Repair Act because in expanding access to repairs for digital electronic equipment and promoting reuse, it would reduce the amount of electronic waste transported through and processed in environmental justice communities. NILPI is also interesting in making it easier for those living in environmental justice communities to participate in positive waste management practices. The Digital Fair Repair Act would expand access to repairs both geographically to areas currently underserved by digital electronics manufacturers and economically, since more competition in the digital repair industry would drive down the costs of repairs. For example, a quick Google search indicates that there are no Apple stores or Apple authorized repairers in the borough of the Bronx, and very few in Brooklyn or Queens as compared to Manhattan. Yet the communities of the South Bronx, North Brooklyn, and Southeast Queens bear the brunt of New York City's waste processing. This new act would enable small local businesses to affordably service these communities. Thank you to the Assembly member and everyone else gathered here for today for your time, and we look forward to working with you to create a more equitable and sustainable waste management system.
Caroline, thank you. Thank you for your work. This is about the public interest, and love the advocacy that's been done there on a whole host of issues. But we really need it here. We're up. I think if New York can do this, we know what happens when New York adopts legislation that's far-reaching like this, whether it's on the environment, whether it's a consumer issue, whether it's a small business issue, it will have a ripple effect. But that's also why it's going to be fought so hard here. Really, really welcomed your continued support. And then to close, although we're happy to open this up for questions for a couple of minutes, but I want to now go to Nathan Proctor with US PIRG, who is heading the director of the Right to Repair campaign. And I've already quoted you so many times, Nathan, the report that you had recently issued, which I find so helpful. So it's certainly not last, but well, you are last, not least. Go ahead, Nathan.
Thank you so much, Assembly Member. Yeah, it's wow. So, we've heard some just incredible stories, right? So about how farmers need access to these tools quickly when they're during short planting windows, or how schools need to be able to affordably repair devices so that kids can continue to learn remotely. You heard stories about people who launched careers just taking junk and turning it into tens of thousands of dollars worth of used equipment. And I just wanted to give you a couple more kind of points. We talked a little bit about the environment, but I wanted to make just give you a couple additional facts. Electronic waste is a huge problem, and the manufacturing of new electronics is a huge environmental catastrophe. Americans get rid of 416,000 cell phones a day, which is patently absurd. We buy these $800, kind of handheld supercomputers, which I'm a big Star Trek fan. And there's like 7 devices in Star Trek that you need just to do what one iPhone does, because we've made this unbelievably useful piece of technology. And then these companies want us to treat it as if it's disposable. I mean, that's just patently absurd. And if you look at the amount of environmental damage done to produce that phone, I think you realize that we have to stop this trend. In Mongolia, there's a lake of acidic radioactive mud, which is an off product for trying to create this chemical that is used in the glass of these phones. I mean, there's literally it's a monument to how fast we're consuming these things, and we should keep them going. But if we're going to do that, we need to stand up to the companies who've made waste their model. Even though that electronic waste is 2% of the volume of our waste stream, it's something like 70% of the toxic heavy metals that we're putting into landfills. It's a huge issue. And it's a big climate, thing too. You mentioned this, Assembly Member. I did a report last year, The Fix Is In, which calculated that if Americans use their phones for 1 year longer, on average, it would be the climate equivalent of taking 636,000 cars off the road. So, and that's just computers, right? And then that also extends to our vacuum cleaners and our refrigerators and all these other appliances and tools, which the life cycle seems to get shorter and shorter and shorter, while the repair ecosystem is getting more and more strained and non-existent. So I dropped this link in the chat, but we need people to stand up and take action. If you wonder why this hasn't happened already, it's because there's $10.7 trillion worth of opposition to this bill. And we got that number by counting up all the companies that registered to lobby on this bill and combining their market value. And we came up with $10.7 trillion worth of opposition. And some of these companies they're lobbying on 20 bills, but GE, for example, spent $200,000 lobbying in the state of New York, on this bill 3 years ago. That was the only bill they registered to lobby for. They spent $200,000 on one bill, and that was to defeat this. So it's not just a lot of companies. There are companies putting in big time money. And so, yes, if we're going to win, we need people like you to stand up. If you think this is a convincing argument that we've made, head over to newyork.repair.org. You can see all the bill reference numbers are there. You can see where the bills are. There's a call tool. You can put in your number. It will patch you through to your legislator. Calls are an exceptionally powerful way for consumers to get their voices heard. And get your local clubs involved, your gardening clubs, your local businesses. The more groups that get together behind this, the more likely it is that we can go toe to toe with some of these big manufacturers, because we know that people are with us. They just want to be able to fix stuff. Nobody wants to have to spend $1,200 to fix something when, you can take it to Lewis' shop and he'll do it for $50. But that's exactly the kinds of things that we need to fight for if we want to keep going in this country. And that's all I have to say about that. Actually, one last thing. Happy Mother's Day to my mom who's on this call.
I love it. And a proud mom she must be. I love it. I love it. Okay, listen, I know it's in the chat here because I saw you post it. It's newyork.repair.org, correct? And if anybody is retweeting or doing anything else, it is I think it's hashtag right to repair. Is that correct? Hashtag right to repair. Okay, so listen, we need the help. That's a stunning statistic, 10.7 trillion in terms of the market value of companies that are opposing this. That's so it's not just the Biden administration using big numbers these days. That's a lot of opposition. But I think it really points to all the more reason why we just need to go at this. This is a consumer-friendly issue. This is needed, and it's a grow jobs issue. Are there any last comments or anything that needed to be echoed? We've got about just a couple of minutes here as we try to wrap this up. You've each exceeded all my expectations, I'll be honest. This is just terrific. You have, and not that they were low for any of you, but it's just, it really is inspiring because I know many of you have been at this for many, many years. I'm happy to join in the fight, partly because I too have been so frustrated. And I can remember my mother. I do think there's the multiple intelligences, and some people are just natural tinkerers, and we've moved away from that. Jeannie, I think that's just what you articulated with getting at children as well, because there's all types of different learners. And if we can get, this is the truest definition of hands-on learning that so many children and adults excel at. So Gay, you went at the beginning, you've been leading the charge on this, or Jeff, we haven't heard as much on the ag industry. Is there any last minute comments or things to echo here? Please just shout it out.
Yeah, I will shout out. I was thinking after our press conference this morning that, yeah, we have a lot of opposition, but what we don't see is any opposition from regular people. We don't see opposition from any of the consumer groups. We don't even see any opposition from any of the big users of technology. There aren't any groups of bankers and insurance companies that say this is bad. They're quiet, which we would prefer they would be more vocal. But honestly, everybody that's a user of something with a chip in it is supportive. And the only people that aren't are the people that get the monopoly, that need that monopoly in order to essentially not compete. So I'm starting to look at who's not on the list, other than the 10 trillion that are.
Okay, great. Jeff, it looked like you were going to say something, please.
I was going to say thank you very much for putting this program together. This is getting these people in the room to talk about this important issue is really spectacular, and I hope it moves the needle.
I have a very likely naive question for you. Just one of the things you had mentioned several times, that there's a lot of very well-funded opposition to this. I have my own perspective as a layperson, but I'm just curious, as an assembly person that's that is a member of the legislative body, where does funding come into play when it comes to this getting passed or not getting passed? Because many of my viewers will hear arguments from lobbyists at AHAM where they'll say if this passes, magtrometers and microwaves will explode. And they're silly arguments, but I'm just trying to make the connection between, like, how does bad argument plus $200,000 equal good argument? Like, is there some sort of a Dropbox that we're missing here that, like, you put money in, get bill out? I just asked because we've raised about $700,000 towards a $6 million goal over the past few weeks with the attempts of getting this passed somewhere. So if said imaginary box exists somewhere, we would love to know.
Oh, wow. Okay. We need a whole nother hour, I think, on that. But when you have well-funded interests with very high-powered lobbyists who can either quietly or very overtly, and big business can come out in opposition. So sometimes it's done very quietly behind the scenes where, yeah, we're just kind of slow walking that bill, or where it's very overt, where there's a public campaign and you see media ads on it. So it can be done in many ways. And as you said, there's ways to kind of distort this, which is why I think what Chuck Bell with the Consumer Reports and others were saying, it's really important that well-regarded advocacy organizations such as NIPERG and USPERG, Consumer Reports and others really try to counteract the negativity because we are going to be hearing more about the negative on safety, security, and what have you. And then, some really about, I'm sounding a little jaded, but sometimes you don't realize the opposition is is the behind the closed doors with better access, those with better access to help hurt legislation. So there's many ways to do this, but the legislation, as you know, has been around for many years and not moved. So that alone tells you something. I think there is more of a groundswell. And I think I keep saying, if COVID has taught us nothing else, it's taught us the importance of entrepreneurial and the gig economy, the keeping small businesses alive on our main streets, and providing supplemental income for people. So I just think there's so many reasons to do this, and we are at an absolute crisis on the climate. So I loved Nathan's stat about and it's not in front of me, Nathan, about what it would mean if we had, what was the line about?
Yeah, so I actually have a stat for New York specifically, but if Americans use their cell phones 1 year longer on average, it would be the same reduction in pollution as taking 636,000 cars off the road.
For good. Just, in other words, that year, or for in general? 636,000.
Well, I mean, if Americans over time continue to use their phones 1 year longer on average, it would be every year. But if they only did it for 1 year, then yes, it would only
it's the equivalent of 636 cars off the
exactly.
That's the kind of thing so we need multiple advocates here. We need the climate change folks. We need the consumer folks. We need the education folks desperately on this, because I think we've really realized how many problems we've had over the last year with overnight schools having to transform to virtual schools, and what that meant for children, especially children who were not as technologically connected or savvy. So there's all sorts of things, but Luz, I hope that answers part of your question. And with that, I really encourage, we will stay in contact with each of you. Please use your statewide associations to talk this up, because we need the business groups and again, educators, every type of public interest group really starting to champion this, and we're happy to do our part. I'm actually thinking we could do more forums or hearings, and maybe some of them won't have to be virtual as we start to come out of this pandemic. So thank you again. This was just terrific, and I'm so appreciative of the work of each of you. Talk about articulate advocates here. Just terrific. Thank you so much. And with that, I should just, while we're wrapping it up, let me just say the name of the bills again. I have the Assembly, the New York Assembly bill, which is A7006. And I share that with Senator Neil Breslin. And that's the New York Senate bill is 4104. So those are the Right to Repair, or sorry, Digital Fair Repair Act. Thank you again, and look forward to hearing more and working more with you. Thank you all. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you for convening us.
Yes, thank you.